Where did Chicken Soup for the Soul come from? I mean, people have seen, everyone listening has seen this book at some point, chances are, unless they're 18 perhaps and have like never been into a dentist's office or a physician's office or an airport or fill in the blank, right? I mean,
Right.
it's ubiquitous. How did it start?
I was going around doing workshops for teachers on self-esteem, motivation, that kind of thing. And I was always telling stories just because I noticed when I was a high school teacher, if I was talking historical facts, kids were looking out the window. If I was telling a story about an escaped slave who became an ambassador, or my own story, or something from Jet magazine or Ebony magazine, the kids would pay attention. So stories capture us. And all the great teachers, Buddha, Jesus, we know they told stories and parables and so forth. So one day, somebody said, that story you told about the Girl Scout who sold 3,328 boxes of Girl Scout cookies in 1 year, is that in a book anywhere? My daughter needs to hear that story. And I went, no. And over a course of 2 months, I must have had 4 people a day say, that story in a book, that story in a book, that story in a book. So I'm coming home on a plane from Boston to LA, where I was living at the time. And I said, how many stories do I really know? So I wrote down every story, the dog story, the Girl Scout story, the puppy story, the Mount Everest story, whatever. It was 70 stories. So I said, okay, that's a book. So I made a commitment that every night I would work on a story. And at the end of the week, I would have 2 stories. And if I did that for a year, I'd have 101 stories, 108, whatever. So I did that. And when I was about, 5, 6 through, I had breakfast with Mark Hansen, who became my co-author. And we were having breakfast in Beverly Hills at this place. All these human potential leaders would come to this breakfast. The Inside Edge was called. And so Mark said, what are you working on? I said, I'm writing this book. And he said, you should let me finish it with you. And I went, that's like telling Stephen King you should be his co-author because he's 5, 6 of the way through the book. How do you justify that? He says, well, some of the stories you tell you stole from me. I said, maybe 3, Mark, come on. And he said, but I'm a much better salesperson than you. I'll be the upfront voice person. I said, well, give me 30 more stories and we'll talk. So I had 70 at that time. So he said, okay, came back, he did it. So basically it was a marriage made in heaven because he really was good at getting the word up. We were in a mall once. Believe this, Tim. We're in a mall where I think it was B. Dalton bookstores. They were in a lot of the malls.
Yeah, I remembered B. Dalton.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we're doing a book signing and there's nobody there. So Mark goes out into the mall and he just starts walking up and down the mall yelling, are you guys crazy? There's a book signing in B. Dalton right now with these 2 amazing authors about the best book in the world. You all should be in there. And so he's doing that. And about 40 people came in to B. Dalton. And then Mark walks up to the front of the room where I am, ready to do the little talk before the signing. And they all like gasped, like, you're the guy that was in the hall. But he would do that. I was too shy to do that. So it worked out really well. But you talked about rejection. We were turned down by 144 publishers once we had a manuscript. And it took us over a year to sell the book.
When I think about that story and I think about, the 4-Hour Workweek, which was also turned down, Steve and I got front row seats, obviously, to this by 37, 39 publishers, something like that, imprints within the publishers. Maybe tell me if this resonates or not, but the reason, you can have a bad idea that gets rejected, right? Just because something gets rejected a lot doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Right.
But in this case, I had tested everything in the classes, so I knew what worked. I knew that the material stuck, so to speak. And you had been testing these stories also in front of audiences. And people had been asking you, where can I read this in a book?
Yeah.
But was there anything else that contributed to the perseverance to go through that many rejections?
I think it's what you just said for us too, because we had tested these stories over and over and told them we got standing ovations. Many of the stories in there, the first book, or what often are called in the speaking business, your signature story, that other people had let us use with their signature stories. So we knew they were tearjerkers, they were inspirational, they made you laugh, they made you feel like you want to call up and tell your mother, I got to read you this story. So basically, we knew that. Like you said, you knew that from your experience. What I find in the book world, especially in the New York publishing world, is everybody wants something that's a copy of something that already worked.
Sure.
When you come along with something radically new, like your idea was and our idea was, up until then, no collections of short stories had ever worked because they were all fictional. and they were too short to like get engaged with the characters and really like go, get involved. Whereas all these stories were in categories like on love, on overcoming obstacles, grief and so forth, that are the human things that everybody lives with, which this is why they're so touched by it. And we just knew to stick with it, and we would have self-published eventually, and I would have made a lot more money, but I didn't really want to be a publisher. I wanted to be a speaker and a writer.
I'm going to read something here. You can tell me if this needs some fact checking, but this is from Thrive Global. This is a Q&A with you. So here we go. It's just a paragraph. Eventually went to ABA, the American Booksellers Association, and went booth to booth for 2 or 3 days. And on the final day, this one new publisher employee said, well, read the manuscript. Some people wouldn't even take it. And they read it in this case and loved it. And they said they'd publish it. We said, how many books do you think you'll sell? And this is their response. 20,000 if you're lucky. And then your response, I think this is you. Well, we want to sell 1.5 million in a year and a half, I said. This employee laughed, and then a year and a half later, we'd sold 1.3 million copies. To sell 1.3 or 1.5 million copies is so hard. I mean, it is so hard to do unless you happen to be very, very lucky somehow in capturing lightning in a bottle. But usually there's a lot of elbow grease behind it. So 2 things. Well, actually, I guess it's just really one thing. What went into selling that many copies over a year and a half? And were you still using affirmations? Was that still one of the ingredients in the cocktail?
Yeah, and then we were doing the mindset work. I always say it's mindset, skill set, and ready, set, go. The set, go, I wanted another set. It's take action. It's action. So someone had told us that the book, The Road Less Traveled, the author of that book had done 5 interviews a day for the first year. 5 interviews a day. Scott Peck. And that book was on the New York Times list for 12 years. 512 weeks.
So long.
Like that. Yeah. I think it's a record. I mean, you were really close, I think. Maybe you still are. I don't know. But the reality was, I thought, well, if that's what works, let's do it. So Mark and I actually had gone to 5 best-selling authors and then read about Scott Peck. And we talked to John Gray, who wrote Men Are From Mars. We talked to Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager. We talked to Barbara DeAngelis, who wrote a book on love. And then another book on TM that someone had written that was successful. And we said, what should we do? And they all said, do as many interviews as possible. Get in front of everybody. I know you did the blogger thing, which was brilliant. Mm-hmm. We did the radio thing. Now I think podcasts are better than radio. I always tell new authors, because the people listening to them, they're your audience. There's a focus. Whereas radio may have a bigger reach, but not everybody's your audience. Mm-hmm. But anyway, 5 a day, every day for a year. So we created what we call the Rule of 5. There's a book by John Kramer called How to Sell a Million Books, something like that. Mm-hmm. It's a great book. We bought the book and we took every idea that was in that book and we made a Post-it, little 2x3 Post-it, put it on the wall. And if you went down the wall of our company at that time, Self-Esteem Seminars, it was just covered with Post-its. And every day we'd take something off and either do it 5 times or take 5 Post-its off and do each one time. Call it church. Can we talk in your church? Can we call 5 PXs in the military and we say, are you carrying our book? Can I send you one? If you like it, will you carry it? Call bookstores. Are you stocking it? Can we send you one? If you like it, will you carry it? Call them back 2 weeks later. Did you get it? It was like nonstop. We were giving talks at churches on Sunday morning, Wednesday night, whatever. They are the ones that have bookstores. We do signings. We signed in the parking lot. I spoke at every damn conference there was. I didn't care where it was or how long it took to get there, if it was there. And we did radio shows that were like at 2 a.m. Maybe a trucker driving through Montana will hear it, but maybe he'll like it. Maybe he'll buy it. Maybe he'll tell his daughter, and his daughter will tell her friends. And so literally it was that level of nonstop activity. And it was interesting because we were pretty amped up in the beginning, and we talked to the psychic guy, and he said, it would be as he was in trance. He'd go, it would be as if you would go to a tree with a very sharp axe, and you would take 5 swipes at that tree every single day. Eventually, even a redwood would have to come down. And we went, okay, Rule of 5. That's what we're going to do.
What prompted the trip to the psychic? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. We knew his wife, and she was a friend of ours, and then he kind of turned psychic, if you will. he was doing these readings and they were awesome. So we just thought, well, why not? Let's ask him what we should do.
How old were you, or what date was this? Either one, roughly when the first Chicken Soup for the Soul came out?
93, and I
93.
was born in 44. So what is that? 49 years old, something like that.
And when it hit, right, when you sold the 1.3 million copies in a year and a half or whatever it added up to be, how did that change your life?
Dramatically.
In what ways did that affect your life?
Well, it allowed me to move out of a very small house. It allowed me to get a better car, all that kind of stuff. I think more so, it was an affirmation from the world that the work I was passionate about was needed. And so it wasn't just the money, it was the confirmation that my intuition, that my passion was correct. You know, you're probably familiar with the concept of ikigai, which comes from the Japanese, where if you love to do something, it's one thing. Are you good at it? Does the world need it? And are they willing to pay for it? So all four of those have to come together for this thing that you're passionate about to actually work. In this case, it did. So I thought, okay, my purpose is needed. It's going to work. I can make a living at it. So it was a big confirmation of that, I think, more than anything. And yeah, I bought 3 sweaters, you know, in different colors and all that kind of stuff. I went through my nouveau riche stage for sure.